So, Dr. J, I know there's like all these different health insurance plans and they cost different amounts. Like, how do I figure out which one is right for me?
Well, do you have a crystal ball that tells me if you're going to be sick or not in the next year? If you don't, we gotta start guessing. And we have a separate video on how does health insurance work. I'd stop there first. But now, once a year, you're going to get the choice of healthcare plans. A couple things to keep in mind. If you have a spouse, if they're legally married, probably going to be able to put them on your insurance. If they're not, it's going to be really hard. Some places offer spousal benefits without marriage, some don't. Also, some plans are now saying if your spouse gets health insurance somewhere else, you can't be on my plan, or it's like extra money, or like so. There's some weirdness on that. So the first thing is you want to figure out what are my options. Once a year, they have open enrollment, have options, or a new job, or what they call a life event. I got married. Well, I get to open up my health insurance again. Ideally, if you're single, you have less options. But if you're married, you're going to look at both plans and go, which one's better? Whatever answer you come up with this year probably will be different next year. They change these plans every year and like up the rates or change this or change the coverage or this doctor's not, and you're like, oh, I just got done with this. I just got used to this new insurance. And now I'm fighting with another one. So, a couple things to look at. First is you need to get a general feel for your own health. If you got some family history or you've got any type of medical problems whatsoever, you cannot cheap out on health insurance. My general rule is I don't cheap out on health insurance at all. My mother's been disabled since most of my life. I mean, I called 911 for her when I was 16, so that gives you an idea. A long time. So health bills have been a big part of my family and a big part of why we're broken many times. So I'm all for like, let's get the better insurance and protect yourself, even though financially that might or might not be the best choice. Because what people sometimes do, they go, look at the plan, here's the cheapest one, that's the one. Well, the cheapest one also has the lowest coverage. And you may want to look at a comparison of your health plan from your employer and something on the marketplace. The healthcare marketplace, this is by ACA, Affordable Care Act, or also called Obamacare. Many states, it's not odd for the state to have a better plan than your employer has. That seems really weird because you're like, shouldn't my employer be cheaper? But not so much.
Yeah, well, I didn't know that you could enroll through the Affordable Care Act if you had insurance, if you were eligible for insurance through your employer.
So each state has slightly different rules, and it's going to depend on how much money you make. They'll adjust the amount. If you have a small business, you're running your own business, you're going to be on the marketplace anyway. If your employer's giving you crap coverage, you're going to be on the marketplace. Seriously. Even if it costs a little extra. It's one of those things like people don't think about. By the way, the other plans that the Fed has of Medicare, so if you're 65 or older, been disabled for 2 more years. Medicaid, if you're broke. You can't qualify for those any other way right now. Now, you take a look at the plans. People first look is how much am I going to pay per paycheck or per month? Yeah, that's a number. But the question is, what is that buying me? So the first thing I like to look at is what's the deductible? The deductible says how much money I have to pay before they're going to pay anything. Now you get high deductible plans where it's thousands of dollars. Low deductible plan, less than 1,000, 1,500, something like that. It's not an exact math. But you're going to have to pay that entire amount before they pay anything. If you don't have the money to pay for that deductible, you got to get a more expensive plan. It's kind of weird. Like if I'm broke, I have to pay more out of my paycheck so that I can afford not to have to pay the deductible. If I have more money, I actually can take a higher deductible, and it's called retaining risk. So I'm taking more of the risk on me that I'm not going to use the plan. It's a gamble. And you only have to get caught once for that math not to work. So, deductible. The next one is out-of-pocket max. It might say $2,000 deductible, which sounds like a lot of money, but that's kind of normal. I hate to say it that way, but that's kind of like, that one's covered. And then the out-of-pocket max says, yep, once you're over that, we're going to charge you some co-insurance or other co-pays or other things until you hit this out-of-pocket max. Now, let's say it's $5,000. That says if like the world comes to an end, I have a really bad health year, I got $5,000 out of pocket. I'll actually probably have more than that because there's certain things they don't cover. That's a separate discussion. $5,000, I'm not going to be destroyed. If it's a 10,000 out of pocket max, that's hurting. And there's some that are 15,000 or I mean like big numbers. So you want to look at that. Then you want to, with those numbers in mind, look at what actually it covers. So you usually have in network, out of network, and it'll say, oh well, like very common right now, primary care is covered to a certain percent or free or other things, and how many therapy visits you get. That's a big one. That's a big difference between them. What services are covered or not, what's in or out of network. Now, you're seeing a lot more plans right now where the in-network is only like one healthcare system. Where like, if you're in a major metropolitan, it is only that metropolitan's healthcare system. Now, I live in the middle of rural Mississippi where no metro here. So if I pick that in-network plan, I'm going to have to drive an hour if I have a problem. That's a long hour, okay? So you want to be thinking about that based on where you're at and where you are in life, and also, frankly, who your doctors are. You don't want to have to change your doctor.
Yeah, one thing I was really surprised about when I was looking at my coverage this last year and picking a plan is that so I need mental health coverage because I see a therapist and I also take anxiety medication, and I need to see a psychiatrist for that. And so I was kind of surprised that that was one of the difference in plan coverage was the mental health coverage, which I wouldn't have expected that would be a difference, but it was. So that was something I wouldn't have thought to look for.
Yeah, it doesn't sound fair, but they'll be like, you can only have 26 visits a year. You're like, what if I'm having a bad time? Anything above that, this is outside the out-of-pocket max out. Just number 27, it's on you. And I'm like, really? My mental health is worth less than my physical? That's a separate discussion. This is where the healthcare system's broken. And by the way, the reason they do that is they don't want to be paying the bills. It's all math. Now, once you have an idea of what's covered or not, what you need to look at and say, all right, if this plan A covers 20% more, is it worth paying 30% more in premium? That's kind of, it's usually like the premium is more than what it covers, but it may be because of you. If your family has history, you have history, you know you need things like you're talking about therapy, I can't choose this plan. I have to choose that plan. When people go on the marketplace, they often go, there's like bronze, silver, gold, platinum. They go, well, I'll just take the lowest one, the bronze, and I'll take my chances. And then I'll look at them like, that plan doesn't cover shit. Like, seriously, it's like a 60-40 plan. You're paying 40%, which if you have the extra money, you could do, but most people don't. All right. So you want to be looking at it, and you want to look at it each year. The other thing to make sure when you look at your plan is to know when the year restarts, because that's going to tell you when all the deductibles restart. The other thing is we have a separate video that talks about FSA and HSA, which are accounts you can get with your healthcare plan. Some people go, well, this high deductible plan gets me an HSA, it's better. Yeah, but now you got the high deductible. So we'll come back to that in a separate video on that. I want you to make a decision first in your health insurance plan, then figure out what other accounts you're qualified for.